All right, welcome to Life and Recovery Podcast. If this if this podcast strikes a note with you or anybody else, please feel free to share it with them. You can find it at Choice Recovery Path on YouTube or any of your favorite streaming sites. At least soon to be on your soon to be favorite streaming sites. This podcast is how do you live life in recovery? Talked about it by people in recovery at different varied stages of the process. So today, my name is Mark. We have Seth. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Seth. Yeah. Grateful to be here.
Thanks.
Um, yeah.
Cool.
I've been in recovery for like 6 years now. Don't have 6 years clean. But I got 5 years in January.
Nice. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Woohoo! You.
5 years and a month and a week. So,
Right.
at least as of this recording. So, and we also have,
I'm Elise. Hi.
what's up, Elise? Um, the ever squeaky hello. So, topics we were thinking about coming into this, having 5 years in recovery. There's some other pieces we've gone over, we're talking about prior to getting going, which was, you know, thoughts of suicide, which can be a whole intense topic unto itself. Healthy relationships, living amends, the maintenance slash stability part of recovery, and whatever else we decide to wander into. So,
Mhm.
5 years in recovery. I remember my sponsor, somebody saying you're a newcomer for your first 5 years. And when I had a year, I was like, that's bullshit. I don't know if I can hear that. But I get it, because if you start to think about a lifetime of recovery,
Mm-hmm.
5 years is but a blink, you know. Um, Comparing that to my length of using 5 years was a blink. So um, how is it having 5 years in recovery?
Mm.
What's different?
Uh, what's different?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about,
Gosh.
day one to month one to year one, it's probably all these points where things were different. What feels different about 5 years, or does it?
Gosh, well, yeah, no, stability, right? Having a solid foundation. There's a lot of tools that I've learned over 5 years and that I've been able to practice and put into use, and I feel that they're, like I'm solid with those. I can um like they're sharp, as we would say. I remember, like, early on, like some of the best stuff that I could do was sleep until 11, get up, go to the noon meeting, hang out with people as much as I can, come back, eat something, maybe lay down again, watch TV, and go to the evening meeting and go fellowship afterwards and come back and do it again. Like that was like my first 30 days. That's what that looked like, and today life has gotten very full, right? A lot of gifts of recovery, but I still, life now is consists of like getting up and going to work, going to the gym, back to work, going to take care of my mom, going to see her, um, you know, home meeting, right? And yeah, I mean that's kind of an average day, right? But it's a lot
Yeah.
different from what it used to be like when I first came in here. So
Yeah, we get all the benefits of the things we asked for, and then your life gets super packed, and now you're we're full and complaining about the things that we have because we shit, I have too much to do. But
right.
so you had mentioned something before we were talking, which was an interesting thought to me. You were saying your sponsor said something to you in the realm of suicide or killing yourself. What was that? Want to
Yeah,
repeat that
you were
for
saying,
everybody?
they say don't kill yourself in the first 5 years because you'd be killing a stranger, right? And that basically is what he was saying. So now if I ever have thoughts of that, I'd be no I know exactly who I'm killing.
Yeah.
Um yeah.
Which did
And
lead
I
me into my next thought, which was, have there's been thoughts that you've had is thoughts of suicide and things something that you have, I mean, has that been part of your story?
In the beginning, there's those thoughts. Now, I don't know. I was never like that. I would have those thoughts. They were fleeting thoughts, but they were there, right? Definitely in the beginning stages, of getting clean and trying to stay clean. And I've had I've had family members and experiences that have been suicide, and so that has been in my family. And my brother, for example, he committed suicide when I was about 12, 13, like seventh grade or so. And and I've had a cousin the same in his 20s. And so yeah, those thoughts in the very beginning were there, fleeting, and it was the sense of like being overwhelmed, not being able to fathom what going forward would look like, or feeling something that I just really don't want to feel and not really knowing how else to deal or cope with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to that idea. I mean, this is something I've definitely had at all stages of my own recovery, that, you know, I remember being at the end of my using, and suicide was I don't know if it was so much suicidal as it was like, if I'm not here, fuck it. Who cares anyway?
Mm,
If it was it wasn't like so much now there was a stage I was outwardly trying to do it, but couldn't. But I definitely live life in the way that, if it happens, who gives a fuck? I mean, there's a thing where it's going in this third book that we're doing is if nothing matters, then anything goes. And, it's like, why do we end? I mean, the simple idea of this tool is that, why do addicts do the really extreme behaviors that they do? Rob a bank, become a sex worker, or do literally any extreme behavior, you
mm,
know? And we kind of been wrestling around with the idea that I think we do that because when I don't matter, that means everything else in my life is literally an option. You know, like,
mhm,
why do I have to fucking worry about anything that I do? I don't give a fuck what happens to me. So I'll do pretty much anything. And so how then the continuation of that idea is, how do you start to make things matter? How do you continue to start to pull things off the shelf that are options in your life? So as you start to develop some level of self-preservation, but
mm,
there was a long and, recent times where I'll have stirring thoughts in the back of my head that, somebody said it to me when I was going through one of my last, I don't know how to put it, iterations of this process, that they talked about it being the ultimate act of self-will. And it made a lot of sense. It's like, I won't use, but there's always that as a backup.
mm.
If it gets really bad, then there's always that way to check out, which is the ultimate. I mean, using is checking out, but that is the ultimate way of checking out,
Yeah.
and when things get super stressful, you don't know what to do or anything. It's like, well, there's always that, and when I'll only speak for myself, when things get dark or bad or hard, those thoughts definitely creep in, they're not ones I want, but they've just kind of been such a long-standing part of my thought processes. I mean, for a long time, that they're always kind of like sneaking around, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the day that they come up. I was at a convention recently, and somebody said that your addiction will attack you at the last place it was successful.
Mm.
And for me, that's one of them. That it runs up and sucker punches me when I'm least expecting it, and trying to get that done. So um I don't know. Elise, you had any thoughts or experiences with this stuff?
Um,
If you so choose to,
I have a plethora of mental health issues. Suicide has not been one outrightly for me. I also like Seth was talking about family history. I did my dad has had some attempts and stuff like that that I found out about later. Um, for me, but I think I really do like when things end, and that's something that's always been there with me my whole life. I have a really hard time with like forever or long term. Um, it's stressful to me. It bores me. It makes me feel trapped or hopeless. You know, I used to scream in the middle of the night when I was a child and ask for my dad, and he'd be like, "Did you have a nightmare?" And I'd be like, "No, I was thinking about forever again." He's like, "What the fuck?" But I would literally, like, if I thought about forever too long, I would freak out. And I was thinking of like good things. I was thinking of whatever I thought of was heaven as a child, and I freaked out because I can't, like, I feel like I need things to end. And that's been part of my addiction. Every couple of years, I would change substances. It's part of my addiction with love. I change relationships every couple of years. I actually feel like I'm losing my mind if I don't see an end to things. So not suicidal, but just very much like almost paralyzed if I feel
Yeah.
like that's where I am.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I don't know if it's a natural part of the process, but I know a huge amount of people in recovery that it's a thought process because I think it's such an ingrained part of the denigration.
Well, he's frozen.
Noise pricing.
It's all right.
You know, it's so funny. I can relate to the 2 year thing you were talking about, though. I could never like it would think about it. It wasn't until I got into recovery where every job that I got lasted just about 2 years, and then it was either something would happen or I'd move on. I
Hmm.
could not do more than 2 years. That was an interesting thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like the first 2 years of recovery almost are like they they take the most work, but then
Mm.
it's you sort of like reach a place also when you hit 2 years where it's like, now what?
Yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It was 2 years was gosh, was it two? Yeah, 2 years for me was a funny one. Um things were, I mean, even after, I mean, like right after I got my year was like when COVID was happening. It was when everything was shutting down. And then 2021, we were kind of in the middle of it still. And so 2 years was interesting. It was an interesting point in recovery for me for sure.
Yeah. Yay, Mark made it back.
Yes, lovely connections at a new office in Las Cruces where signals suck. So sorry about that, y'all. But I kept talking until I noticed you guys were frozen, but I was the one frozen. But well, this is recovery. Shit changes all the time. But I was sitting there thinking about, why is suicide such an ingrained part of, I think, a lot of people in recovery's process? And if you think about it, I mean, God, like if you're drinking excessively, if you're doing any drug excessively, but especially in the world of, I mean, before it was heroin, but fentanyl and every other drug that can literally, within one use, you could be dead. That it's such an ingrained part of the process that I think there's an aspect of it that I don't know if I'd say that maybe almost grow comfortable with. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it's like there's a lot of desensitization that comes with it when it's just that ever present part of your life. Oh, am I going to do too much? Oh, is that enough? Oh, is it what's in here? I don't know. That I think, and then combine that with the fact that there's zero level of self-preservation, and you're doing things in your life where you don't care anyway. Matter of fact, not only do I not care, I'm doing shit where I outwardly don't like myself. I'm ripping off my grandma. I'm doing whatever you're doing in your life. You're actually creating a level of self-loathing or self-hatred that, fuck it, maybe this isn't a bad idea to just check out. And I think that part of it becomes just such an ingrained part of, the addict experience that, I think I mean, if we were to ask people honestly, out of 100, I would bet you north of 85 would probably say, yeah, I have thoughts of that on a regular basis. So if this is such a common theme throughout our community, what can we do? I mean, what baby steps? I mean, I won't lie to you guys, there's still times I will have these thoughts that if things get really bad, well, there's always that last option to check out. And I'm not saying I'm going to, by the way, but I've had some really dark times in my life where that was a thought, and
Do you notice like when you have those thoughts, do you notice like what is going on in life? Like, is there a correlation to whatever's or not happening?
yeah, and an overwhelming amount of stress or a situation that I just don't see an out to, which, there was one when I was in the legal system, there was one that it was just like, if it comes down to that being my alternative, fuck that, I'll check the fuck out. Um, you know, if it, I mean, you could fill in the blank with the situation, but yeah, I've noticed it's never just one thing. It's a culmination of things. Any one of them by themselves, maybe not so catastrophic, but a combination of many of them, hard time in a relationship, job not going the way you want, kids driving you crazy. I mean, I don't know, I'm just making things up arbitrarily, but, going through the legal system, financial strains or stresses, like any assortment of life struggles, then, when you don't see a way out, we were talking about this last week, which when you have a stress in your life that exceeds your skill sets, then it turns into a behavior later. So we were talking about, I think that was last week, but I don't know if suicide would be considered a behavior, or thoughts of that would be it's a very singular behavior, but so the point is, like, if all of those things come up, what do you do when you get in that position? How do you actually slowly back away, as it would? I mean, because that's what it's felt like for me, that I need to just be very conscious and slowly start backing away from those thoughts. Because there's an idea that if you get to the place where you're actually planning and strategizing and, creating steps, that's a bad place to be in. That's the only way I can put it. Obviously not a therapist, not trying to be. But I mean, I think a lot of things in recovery, how do you make it aware? I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, like I'm hearing, yeah, when you feel like there's no way out, which to me is like hopelessness, like you can't see it at all. And then like this feeling of being trapped, which was actually similar to what my experience with feeling paralyzed, and then also like overwhelm of stress, which is like what Seth was talking about.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like it sounds like like maybe if I'm starting to get hopeless, trapped, or like so ever overwhelmed I can't even like see straight. Like maybe for some people that's a good indicator of like I have to stop and figure out like another direction to go in. I mean, for me, like if I'm in a lot of pain, I feel like there's no direction. I feel trapped, but I also know that means that I've got to find another direction. And I don't have to do it alone. Like I can just be like, I'm trapped. Like I am stuck and I'm overwhelmed, but I have to like, it's like the cry for help, right? Like
Mhm.
I have to make that cry or like nobody's going to hear me and I'm never going to get a solution. I'm never going to, you were talking about self-will, right? Like it's almost that you start getting these blinders on, right? Where like that's all you can see. And like for me, I need my higher power, but also other people who my higher power speaks through is like to pull the blinders, like no, 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 no. Like this is what you're seeing, this is what you're thinking and feeling. That's not the whole picture. Like, let me help you, you know?
Yeah, I've got into the place of like I know this sounds weird, but I've taken it to worst case scenario, like not the actual suicide part, but the event that I'm going through. If worst case scenario happens, what would it really be like? Would it be as, because I can catastrophize the shit out of anything. What would it actually be like if, like I remember there's a time when I was looking at a huge amount of time in incarceration. What would happen if that actually did happen? Instead of like running to the to the one answer that seems like the final solution to everything. What would happen if I would say I did have to go to prison for a long period of time? Is there something you could do to approach that in a way that could, I'm not saying it could be positive, but would it be as bad as you thought? Is there another alternative or option? Because I think like I agree with you that tunnel vision that we only seeing the problem and not searching out any kind of a solution, I think is where a lot of people get. And then it gets darker and darker and darker, and you feel more alone and more isolated, more separated from others, which is the other thing you brought up, which is, everybody feels they're alone. I don't, Seth, you brought up your brother, and I don't know. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get into a topic that's not mine to get into, but a lot of people, I had a friend of mine who had this similar situation, one of my best friends growing up, that similar situation with him and his brother. His brother passed away at a similar age to, I'm assuming, you and your brother, and he was reminding me how his brother isolated himself a lot. The closer he got, the more isolated he became. And, and maybe to me, it's, I guess I go from this that I want to be able to take away from this, that somebody can take away something from this every single day that they can apply to their life immediately. And I guess the things that have been helpful to me is exactly that. It's to get a little, even to know I feel like shit. Things I don't have any solution. Things are changing, but I'm going to get out amongst others. If even on small scale, if even if it's just go to a meeting, or if it's just go to, if church is your thing, or exercise, or go to the gym, or go to the park, or sit in the sun, or spend time with your dogs, or do those things. If we could start to do that, to literally allow that to be the very baby steps towards shifting that dynamic. You know what I mean? Like coming at this in a different way. You know, I guess the other thing is, I just thought of this. The other thing that stood out to me is somebody reminded me suicide is essentially like taking all the pain that you feel right now, amplifying it by 100, and giving it to everyone that truly loves you.
Hmm.
And I thought about that. I was like, I mean, if I feel like this way, that's one thing, but I don't want to do that to everybody else. And then that's what it's been like, because I know that people that have lost through overdoses or using, it's exactly what it feels like. It's like, fuck, you're almost pissed. You're like, what the fuck? But I mean, the other topics, I mean, I don't know. You guys have any other thoughts on this topic? But
I mean, the only I like how you're talking about like what would actually happen, like whatever is so overwhelming or too much to handle. It's kind of like playing out the tape. And
Mhm.
I like the thought of that, and I mean like when you're in that place, it's like okay, what if it's I don't know, financial, right? Well, what's the worst that can happen? Like I don't know, I go bankrupt. Okay, well, I go bankrupt. And like one calming thought, if I play the tape out, it's like, well, I know somebody who's gone bankrupt and they're doing okay now, right? Like it's, but it's hard to, when you have that tunnel vision, it's hard to sometimes get there. But playing out the tape it's been a practice, right? I think it takes practice, but just even having the conversation like we're having now and shedding light on the thoughts that we have makes
Yeah.
it easier to 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 uh to kind of dissect it and look at it and get around it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess there is some level of, go ahead, Elise. Sorry.
I was just thinking like something that's been always been helpful for me to remember is like, because I knew this with addiction, or I learned this, but I had to apply it later for like my mental health stuff. But like remembering, like, when you hear people in recovery being like, well, the disease is really talking to me. And like, that's not what happens in my head. Like, I don't have a little thing talking to me, but I do have like, the thoughts that come from addiction are basically steering me towards, like they say in like recovery readings, the slow suicide of using is like, oh, you should just have one. You should just do that thing. And I know where that leads, but that also happens like with mental health too, where like my anxiety will tell me stay inside. The solution is to get outside. Like depression will tell me like stay in bed. The solution, get out of bed and call someone. Like I have to remember that like if I'm feeling depressed or anxious or whatever the thing is, like the thought is wrong. Like once I can label like this thought is wrong because it's coming from a disorder, it's like not it's you know not healthy thinking. It's the opposite. Then I know I can like, okay, then what's the opposite? Is it easier said than done? Yeah, but sometimes just labeling like, oh, that's a depressed thought. Like that's an anxious thought. That's an addict thought. That takes a lot of the power away from me because I can be like, I know what it's coming from. It's not coming from like a lens of reality. Like, oh yeah, I've had that thought before. And sometimes I need to like talk to someone else and they can label it for me. Like oh, that's not a clear picture of reality. That's, coming from how you're feeling or whatever.
Totally challenging your first thought, even as comfortable as it may feel.
Yeah.
It's really easy for me to slide into these negative, self-loathing, bullshit that I tell myself, you know, the self-narrative that I've had for years or decades that I know doesn't serve me, but gosh, it just feels so normal and comfortable,
Yeah.
to come at things, in a different way. So I mean, to think about some things that can be helpful, being amongst people, challenging my thirst thought, asking other people for their opinion, and then what would you do in this situation? Which also helps avoid the isolation part, taking a meaningful next step to what we have to do um, for ourselves. Have I, the easy thing is halt. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Have I eaten or not? Have I taken the next step? Um, yeah, a lot of things like that would be kind of the thought. So
And I've
looking
had
at,
times, oh, sorry.
go ahead, keep going.
I've had times where I couldn't pick up the phone, I couldn't get out of bed, but like I have literally, and this has happened in recovery with, just whatever painful experience is what is happening. I've literally said out loud, like, I need help, like in my bed out loud to the air. And I have felt comforted. And like, I don't know what a higher power is, but I know my experience with doing that of just like, it's almost like, well, it's the surrender, right? Once I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, like I can't do this. Like I'm like getting vulnerable. I'm like open for something to come in. Like I'm making space for something else, you know?
Yeah. I'm finding a way to actually do these things differently to, yeah, to challenge my normal way of doing things, which is kind of a good segue into some of the other things, a little bit of the lighter topics that we'd started talking about were, the healthy relationships, the living amends, the maintenance that it takes to get longer periods of time, you know, um, the I mean, for me, the living amends part, well, let's define what is that to you guys? What is living amends? Seth, what's it mean to you?
God, well, I mean, number one, living amends to me is making a choice not to pick up every day, right?
Okay.
Like that's a living amends to myself. Just that, yeah, just that act, right? But living amends, as far as like my mom goes, that's like behavior change, right? It's showing up differently
Hmm.
than I
Yeah.
used to.
Okay. What does it mean to you, Elise?
Well, it's interesting. Like I'm a real people pleaser, so living amends to me at first in recovery was like making sure everybody's not mad at me anymore.
Yeah.
Making sure nobody's disappointed with me. And so, did that help me stay clean? Yeah, for sure. And I have been able to show up for a lot of people. But one of the things that I would forget a lot is like I'm on the top of my amends list. I've caused me the most damage. Like relationship with self is the biggest relationship I'm actually repairing. And so,
Yeah, the easiest
like,
one to discount.
oh yeah, totally. Because who's gonna know if you did it or not?
Mhm.
And you don't get the little reward of like a pat on the head unless you pat your
Yeah.
own head, which I do sometimes. But being able to be like I'm working on relationship with self in a way that I have never worked before. Um and so living amends to me today, making amends to myself is like not agreeing to do something that isn't in alignment with my authentic self. Not agreeing to because then what actually happens is I'm miserable. I'm in my bed yelling out to the air, I need help. I am isolating. I'm not connecting with people. I form resentments towards people that I've said yes to things to that I didn't really want to do. And so I am hurting other relationships now. Like the most important thing I do is with me because it's me, and also it affects the other ones at some point in time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, to me, I mean, literally, I, I think I started out thinking an amends meant to say sorry, and it's the opposite. It is literally to mend. I think about a piece of fabric to actually mend it. There's always that tear that I created, but I can mend it back to where it was, you know. And this was important to me to the people that are no longer, that I've either hurt and will no longer see, or that are no longer here, and that I can't necessarily make a direct amends to, but I can live differently. I can live in alignment with the person that I am choosing to be. I can make decisions that are clearly in alignment with living a life of recovery. I can, which involve kindness and generosity and being just literally being the person that I aspire to be. And especially when no one's looking, you know, that my actions do match my words, and I do the things that I say I'm going to do, when it's hard, you know. My partner and I are always joking with each other because she's in recovery too about, where's the spiritual principle in that when somebody pisses us off? My first reaction is spiritual principle, punch you right in the fucking mouth is what I want to do. But, the reality of it is you can't actually do that. So, a living amends is living differently, especially at the times that it's not easy. When you actually have to, okay, I'm not going to do what my first reaction is, like you talked about earlier, my first thought, and go to something that's more in alignment with the way that I want to live. That's what a living amends is to me, and as a result of that, it does bring up healthier relationships, So Seth, you were bringing up having a healthier relationship. How do you know you're doing that? How do you know it's different from your old? Well, give me an example of your old relationships first.
Old relationships was, um, they were like, it was very surface level, right? Surface level. It wasn't, I don't think there was much consideration for the other person. So it was like a very, what can I get sort of deal. And yeah, it wasn't there wasn't the thought of like building a relationship. It was more of just I need something to make me feel better.
Hostage taking.
Yes.
Cool.
Right. Say that.
Satisfy my needs, be damned anything that you need. Okay.
Mm.
What were old relationships like to you, Elise?
Romantic?
They were romantic?
Are we talking about
Yeah,
romantic?
I mean, yeah, with partnerships.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had one of those. I'll get back to you when that happens.
No, the
But
old version, the unhealthy version.
oh, I've had plenty of those.
That's what I mean. Give me a
And I've had
description
plenty
of
of those in recovery as well. Um which is actually what brought me to this level of working on relationship with myself. Um wouldn't you know, like the core of unhealthy relationships is you can't have one if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself. Um,
Yeah.
so obviously, there has been, I mean, in addiction, it was all addiction, and I remember doing my first fourth step, and it was all my fourth step was just like, is this pattern of men. It was like, um, my resentment toward my dad, and then every other romantic relationship I had after that. And I thought, okay, the first one I didn't have any control over, right? I was a child. He moved. I felt abandoned. But then all the ones after that were like, oh, well, I was just using and they were using. So of course it was fucked. And then I came into recovery and I was like, great, we're not using anymore. Let's relationship. And turns out there's deeper levels, right? It's not just not using, it's working on all the stuff in here. And so I was really like, I was talking about earlier, like feeling trapped or stuck and having a problem with forever, like I would get into relationships that weren't healthy. And I think I knew that on a subconscious level because I knew it would probably end in a couple of years and it would be their fault. And then I could walk away resentful and self-righteous, you know. And
Such a
that's
good
all.
position to be in.
Yeah, it's my favorite, really. And
It's your
so
fault and I am holy. Look at
yeah,
me.
I'm a saint. What?
Yeah.
And so like, you guys were talking about like the self-seeking thing, I was such a caretaker and a people pleaser. I was saw myself as so selfless, but I was picking people out of a place of insecurity and low self-worth in me. And so I was seeking to attach to people, and they were like my possessions, like you are here to provide me security, and it's no human being's job to do that. That's just me and my higher power, and that's what I'm learning is more about that.
Yeah. Which is great. I mean, I was talking to a friend a while ago about, relationship being great, but getting in a love affair with yourself, and it really struck a chord with me on how to, that that's actually possible because, I'm very much, I spent decades just, oh, we have a problem. Stay here. I'm going to go to the bar for 5 or 6 years. I'll be right back. But don't you be with anybody. You stay right here. But I was never present, never active. It was always about, you know, how did, what did they do for me? Nothing that was ever collaborative, nothing that was ever, now, of course, the story I told myself at the time was nothing but, oh, how what a, martyr I am and how much I try and all the shit that I do, which was, you can't try when you're using, you have one objective, you know, except for that relationship. I was incredibly committed to the one longest standing relationship I had my whole life, which was using. But, how do you actually learn to do that when you've never actually seen it? How do you actually, I would consider now I actually do have a quite healthy relationship. We get along probably, and I'm not exaggerating this, I bet we get along 97% of the time, which is pretty cool. The 3% can be a little rough, but because that's basically when both of our broken parts start bumping into each other and then we start lashing out in the ways that we know best. But for the most part, we get along because, we've learned how to develop an affinity for ourselves and our self-preservation and to, keep our recovery first in our lives because we're both in recovery. And we both know what the other side's like. And to start, and we do give each other shit. Wow, you need to go talk to your sponsor about that, motherfucker. Shit like that. But there is a healthy aspect of it to where we know what's ours and what somebody else's. And somebody we brought up recently going to couples counseling. And somebody was like, is it wrong? And they were like, no, but I I heard somebody talking about this and it made so much sense. They were like, the best time to go to couples therapy when things are good. Because then you're building from a place where you're moving up instead of trying to get back to some place of normalcy. And I'm like, all right, it's going good. Maybe we should go to a couples therapist and see if we can make it better and learn new ways to communicate and to move towards a place of improvement as opposed to, a place to go. Where most people should go to couples therapy is to find somebody to validate their side of the equation. Well, neither of us really have anything to validate, so let's go check it out and see what there is. And so we're probably going to start undertaking that endeavor in the near future. So, which is cool to looking. So I asked you about the bad relationships. What about the good sides? So at least you said that's something you're seeking out and haven't gotten to yet, which I truly respect because I've been watching you and how much effort you're putting into you. Seth, what has it been? You're in a healthy relationship now, you're saying?
Yeah. Yes. It's so a healthy relationship, I think it like boundaries, being able to communicate boundaries, communicate feelings when, because for me, a lot of times when something wasn't going right or I didn't like something, it's much easier to stuff that down and then kind of avoid it until it gets to a point where it's like, oh, this isn't working at all. And then it's over. Right. And so this time it's like, well, this is how I'm feeling, you know, and and here it is. This is how I'm feeling. I either know or don't know what to do about it, but I just want to let you know. And that's much more healthier than the opposite. And that's taken, and I don't know, each one has gotten better. It like didn't really date first couple years of recovery, and then started to get out there and First one wasn't that great, and the second one was a little bit better, but it was still wasn't good. And then this one, it like each time it's gotten a little bit better, you know. Um, so yeah, I mean, for me, it's the healthy part is being able to communicate what I want and what I don't want
Mhm.
to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge amount of value of dating somebody who works the program
Yeah.
for themselves, because it's easier to identify, my fuck ups, I guess, is a word to say, and working somebody who is in recovery themselves that actually works a program really it by default eliminates a lot of bullshit. Now it does bring up its own unique, series of shit. When you're that self-aware, it's easy to or some level of self-awareness. I'm saying I'm not self-aware, but some level of self-awareness where it's easy to spot everybody else's shit. You need to go deal with that. And it's like, hey, fuck you. But so we've looking at the healthy sides of these things, brings up what we were talking about earlier, which is maintenance, because a lot of people, like I mean, when I was earlier in recovery, it was hard. Maintenance was never a topic because the reality was I was really good at fixing shit. My life of an addict was I would fuck things up and then I would fix it. And I would fuck it up and then I would fix it. And I would fuck it up and I'd fix it. I was really good at that dance. But this whole fuck things up, fix it, but then maintain it and keep it right, that's been a new process. So what do you guys do to maintain your recovery? What's most important to you?
For me, it's connection, right? So there's like some foundational things that are still in place. For me, it's like it's meetings. That's a real strong foundation. Step work, right? And really being connected with my community, people in recovery. And whether that's like, going out for coffee or a phone call or, connecting with them on some level, right?
Yeah.
Service, being able, I think that's one of the like greatest things about like maintaining my recovery is being able to give it back. I mean, it's obviously, I can only keep what I have by giving it away. And so biggest form of maintenance is being able to share what I've, how my experience.
Okay, cool. Elise, what does maintenance look like for you now?
Yeah, it's similar to what Seth was saying. And it's kind of like, when you hear people say cliches like just stick to the basics, like which sounds boring, but like the basics in themselves remain the same for me, but like what what part of it or what the journey unfolds in that continues to grow and change. So it really isn't boring, but it is still like yeah, some like meetings and fellowship, right? Like I've got to be around people, I've got to hear a message, and I've got to socialize. Um, then there's like my spirituality, like I have to sit and meditate, read a meditation, write on it, talk to my higher power. Um, and then and I need to do that. I do that practically every morning. I have to do
Okay.
that. I also do step work a few times a night during the week. Um Service, I sponsor some women. I have some service commitments. Um and it's like it's all the same basic things. It just looks different over time. But it's just like I think what makes it maintenance is like it's like like if I took an antidepressant pill, you know what I mean? Like, do I need to take like I was on a lot of meds when I came into recovery to keep me stable, but over time I needed fewer, but I still had to take whatever med I was on once every day. Right? So like that's like recovery to me is like I went to like 270 meetings in the first 90 days, because I had to live there. Today I have 3 or 4 meetings a week, but so it's like the same basic thing. Like I have to keep that recovery in my daily life. And I could not do it. It takes a little bit of work, but I feel so stable and secure and peaceful and joyful when I do.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty simple. I still go to NA regularly, near daily. I mean, not quite daily anymore, but pretty close. I still work with the sponsor. I still work steps. I still talk to therapists. I basically look at all the things that got me here and I still do all of them because they work. I do a lot of yoga. I take care of my physical health. I definitely try to eat better, pushing 52 or well, I am 52. I'm not pushing it anymore. I got to pay attention to what I put in because it's a lot harder to stay in shape the older you get. I surround myself with healthy people. I enjoy traveling. I love doing the things that I do that give me joy. And, being involved with people that I actually enjoy spending time with. Those are a lot of things. So, it's a combination of that, really incredibly helpful. So I really appreciate you guys' time today. And yeah, if anybody else out there found this conversation was valuable, you can find it on choicerecoverypath.com on YouTube. And we look forward to hearing from you guys again soon. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Have a great
Thanks,
rest
Mark.
of your day. Cool. Thanks,
Bye.
Seth. I appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
All information and other content supplied or communicated in or through this video is for general informational purposes only and does not nor is intended to constitute legal or medical advice. Any viewer of this video should contact his or her own attorney, doctor, or other applicable advisor or practitioner to obtain legal, medical, or other applicable advice with respect to the accuracy, reliability, or potential application to such viewer of any matter discussed or portrayed in this video. Please do not act or refrain from acting in any way based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through this video. The views expressed during this video are those of the individual presenters only and not those of Choice Recovery Path LLC or any of its customers, suppliers, or affiliates. Any liability with respect to actions taken or not taken by any viewer based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through such video is hereby expressly disclaimed. All such information or content is expressly provided as is and free of any representation or warranty of any kind.